Okay, who else besides me was hoping that after he lost the CMC and Applejack screamed, we'd come back from the commercial break and Brayburn would have 2 broken limbs. So, Appeloosa's Most Wanted. Where do I start? Well, I guess we'll just do the normal thing and we'll start with the good. This episode had a great moral, showing how sometimes we don't understand our talents. Even into adulthood, we still kind of are trying to figure out who we are and what we're supposed to be doing. You know, Troubleshoes was someone who was confused about who he was supposed to be. He didn't understand what his gifts were or how to use them. And I feel like a lot of us are in that position. I also really liked a lot that we got to see the CMC again, because they're my favorite characters in this show. So to be able to see the Crusaders doing their Crusader thing was awesome. I especially like how Sweetie Belle, again, is like the most logical and level-headed of them. Scootaloo and Apple Bloom are all just like, let's go chase after this really creepy villain dude that is terrorizing this town because maybe we'll get our cutie marks. And she's just like, what? So that was cool. Sweetie Belle is amazing. I always love her, and she was great in this episode too. So let's talk about the bad in this episode. Psst. Click here if you want to skip. You know what? No. No, I don't think I'm going to do that this time. I'm not, no. Forget that, cut the music, stop. Listen for a second. As great as this moral was, it completely contradicts everything we've been told about cutie marks since essentially the beginning of the show. A mark is a representation of that eureka moment when you realize your destiny. That's how it was shown in Cutie Mark Chronicles. If it's something that can happen passively without you truly understanding and requires further reflection, why haven't the Cutie Mark Crusaders gotten their marks yet and simply not understood them? Or anyone have that happen to them? All signs seem to indicate that the CMC have performed their talents before, they just aren't aware that those things are their actual talents. The entire crusade of the Cutie Mark Crusaders is undermined by the logic on display in this episode. The trio have been repeatedly told that their mark will come with time, and not a moment sooner. And clearly, this isn't the case with Troubleshoes. And you know, I really should care about this point, as someone who constantly harps on the narrative integrity of this series, as I've done for the last 2 years. But I don't. I don't care. I'm not even surprised anymore, really. It seems that as of late, this series has put a lot more weight on the individual happenings of episodes and less about the overarching lore. This is just the latest in a string of examples. Who cares, you ask? Well, I care, clearly. That was a big part of the draw for me of this series, and seems to be something that's continuing to erode as time goes on. And I'm sure just mentioning this is gonna piss off a lot of you guys. I'm sure this video is being bombarded with downvotes and negative comments as I speak, but I can't help but seem to notice that this series doesn't seem to care about things like this in the same way that it used to, and because of that, I just can't seem to care about the series like I used to either. There's just a plethora of better shows on right now that care so much more about their own integrity that I find it hard to even remember what made the show so compelling in the first place. Maybe season 1 and 2 really were that much better, or perhaps this is totally on me. That's just as much of a possibility. But regardless, between other shows like Steven Universe, working on writing and drawing, and an entirely new YouTube project I've been considering starting up for the last 6 months, I have more than enough things to occupy my time than talk about a show I largely don't care about anymore. A show that doesn't seem to care much about itself anymore either. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Other things. But it's not the show that's the only problem, though I'd be lying if I said it wasn't the bulk of it. The community that has kept me around for so long seems to have degraded even further than the show that spawned it. The current MLP fandom is little more than a hollowed out husk of what it used to be, and for a while I wasn't going to really talk about this or say anything about it. I was either gonna not mention it at all, or hide it behind a click here to skip the bad button like I have for the last couple episodes. But I think the fact that I even felt it necessary in this fandom to include something like a click here to skip the bad button goes to show, to put it rather bluntly, just how fucking pathetic this community has become. And I bet that's gonna piss off a lot of people, but I feel I need to be absolutely brutally honest with my experiences in this fandom for the next 5 minutes because apparently nobody else is stepping up to the plate. Either that or no one else has noticed. The click here to skip the bad button was an experiment to see if the perception of who I am and what I created could be radically altered simply by having the option to skip the critical parts of my content. The parts of my content that required thinking and required effort and were actually what made me what I wanted to do. And a lot of people jumped on it. I had people thanking me in the comments for adding this feature, and watch time on my videos as of late has been dramatically lower than normal because people are skipping half of the video because apparently they're that sensitive. But then something changed. The reaction to last week's video was eye-opening. Because I wasn't very critical of that episode at all. I was actually pretty positive. And yet it's my most disliked video of Season 5 so far, because I chose to leave something out. Something I thought was overblown, overrated, and something that I would have been really negative about if I just continued to think about it, instead of casting it aside and focusing on what worked in that episode. You know, what all my detractors have been telling me to do this entire time. But that didn't matter, because it's not about positivity or negativity. Not really. If it was, that video would have gone over fine, because those people already knew about the point concerning the stages of grief with Rainbow Dash, so having me talk about it would have added nothing to that conversation, and that's especially for those people. What they wanted, what they needed, was affirmation. Was their parrot to regurgitate exactly what they were thinking so they could feel justified. Just like all these other parrots they have lined up on their subscription feed, dancing for them in the name of subscribers and Patreon money. It's never been about me being negative, it's about affirmation. There's only one way to interpret an episode, and the bulk of the analysis fan base, and I use that term loosely, want that one interpretation repeated to them over and over again so they can feel justified in their overzealous obsession with a children's cartoon. They want people other than themselves to call it perfect so they can stave off the scorn of their peers and the internet at large, comfortable in the fact that people say it's perfect, so it must be true. Too insecure in their own convictions to merely like what they want to like and not let a difference of opinion affect them so personally. And that's just so pathetic. This fandom loves to spout stuff like love and tolerance, yet it cannot seem to possibly fathom something like tolerance when it comes to dissenting opinion. Every time I come off as remotely negative, questioning the decisions of an episode, or even something as simple as choosing not to discuss a part of an episode I feel has been overblown, as was seen last week, it's met with hatred, dissent, and disgust. Personally, I think MLP has lost a ton of its luster compared to its earlier seasons. I think a lot of its integrity has been compromised as time has gone on and its focus spread. And I've thought about this for a good while now, but I can't talk about that, because even the thought of criticizing this show is met with pitchforks and outrage. And it's a shame, because I think it would be a healthy discussion to have. But other than small pockets of sanity here and there, a large part of the community would rather bury their heads in the sand. When it gets to the point that I have to censor my legitimate thoughts and sugarcoat what I want to talk about and hide it behind a click here to skip the bad button, lest the success of my channel be in jeopardy, something is wrong. And something is wrong with the My Little Pony fandom, or at least the people who are interested in the so-called analysis community, which is quickly losing members who actually do analysis. It should probably be renamed the Cult of Positive Pony Affirmation, because the only way to gain any traction now is to suck off the show and hide your empty praise and lack of substance behind flashy outsourced visuals that you're not talented enough to do yourself. This fandom has become so unsure of itself that it's lost all ability to think rationally, and is so terrified that there might just be a tiny bit of truth buried in all these questions that are being asked by people who are still looking at the series objectively, that they'd rather snuff those voices out and drag their names through the mud. People who had legitimate complaints that, might I remind you, don't have to affect your own perceptions at all, are all but vilified in the current pony fandom hive mind. Here's a thought. Maybe if these comments are pissing you off so much, it's because, deep down, you know there might be some validity in them. This fandom has transformed in the couple years I've been in it, from a tightly knit community of level-headed individuals who merely like the TV show, to a mob of frothing zealots that accept only one point of view, Pony is perfect, persecute any opposition. I look at this fandom as it is now, and I honestly don't understand why I got involved in it anymore. Whether I've just become that jaded, or it's really devolved that massively, I can't help but feel that if it were this way in 2012, I wouldn't have touched the thing with a 10-foot pole to begin with. I'm pretty much done with the MLP fandom. I don't regret spending my time here, and to the large amount of my viewers who have supported me regardless of what my opinions are, know that none of this is directed towards you. You guys have been a pleasure to interact with, and like I said, I'm going to be continuing to be doing other things besides Pony in the future. And I hope to see you all there, because I feel that'll be my best work yet. But I certainly can't say that I don't regret what this fandom has become, and what's become of my reverence for it. I always called the Roni community a community because it's exactly what it felt like to me. It used to be something really special, something I was proud to be a part of. Now I'm just proud to be finally leaving. You know, I get messages constantly from people bitching about how my videos have ruined their enjoyment of My Little Pony. Well, to all of those people, I'd like to say congratulations! You've done the exact same fucking thing to me with your overbearing, blind fanboyism. The MLP fandom has been ruined for me because of you guys. Because I can't watch an episode without cringing over the inevitable stupidity I'll have to be exposed to if I decide to talk about something divisive publicly. So I suppose, in that regard, we're even. Goodbye.